Let me be direct with you from the outset. What we are witnessing in the Red Sea is not a sudden escalation of a regional conflict. It is not, as the mainstream media continues to insist, a chaotic series of uncoordinated rebel attacks. What we are witnessing is something far more precise and far more dangerous, a deliberate strategic bottleneck designed to test the absolute limits of Western naval power. I am looking at data circulating among regional military analysts that has been quietly verified over the past 72 hours, and I need you to look at it with me. Because what these reports show is not a fleet of traditional destroyers. It is not a sprawling array of long-range missile batteries. What it shows are 12 specific semi-autonomous underwater vehicles currently operating at depths that Western sonar systems are struggling to map. This is not speculation. This is happening right now, and nobody in the cable news cycle is explaining why these specific shapes are shifting the balance of power in real time. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why these developments constitute a fundamental shift in maritime security, why this is being actively ignored by the major power brokers, and what this means for the global energy supply chain. This is geopolitical analysis for those who care about the reality behind the headlines. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being analyzed by defense departments from Washington to Beijing, yet remains completely absent from the public conversation. Let us start with the geography of the Red Sea because for most it is just a line on a map. In reality, it is one of the most critical economic arteries in the world, carrying nearly 15% of global trade. The average depth in key transit corridors is approximately 100 meters, but the bathymetry, the floor of the sea, is jagged, filled with deep trenches and unexpected rises. To put that in perspective, a modern American Arleigh Burke-class destroyer relies on sensors that are essentially calibrated for open ocean anti-submarine warfare. When you move those systems into these shallow, congested waters, they become blind. This means that a relatively low-cost, low-tech obstacle can now neutralize a multi-billion-dollar platform. This is the new reality of asymmetrical naval engagement. According to the International Maritime Organization, traffic through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait has reached a critical threshold, and regional experts have stated publicly that the current maritime insurance premiums are no longer sustainable for standard commercial vessels. I want you to pay attention to this part because it reveals everything. The inability of the combined Western task force to guarantee passage is not a failure of equipment, it is a failure of doctrine. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of analysis anywhere else. Now let us look at what is actually occurring beneath the surface. Announcement number 1. The deployment of semi-autonomous loitering munitions. And this one matters more than anything else happening in this theater right now because it effectively renders traditional carrier-based air superiority irrelevant. These units are not just mines, they are adaptive intelligent systems that can differentiate between civilian tankers and military escorts. We are seeing confirmed reports of these units maintaining a silent posture on the seabed, only activating when specific acoustic signatures are detected. This is a classic anti-access area denial strategy, perfected over decades, now being deployed in the most sensitive trade route on Earth. According to reporting by Defense Security Asia and confirmed by multiple regional military analysts, the number of these units has doubled in the last month. U.S. Navy leadership has acknowledged publicly that the cost-to-effect ratio here is completely inverted. A $1 million missile is being used to neutralize a device that likely costs less than a luxury car. That math is unsustainable. And that is why this is a strategic disaster for the current naval posture. Received? That is announcement number 1. Announcement number 2. The erosion of diplomatic resolve among Western allies. This is the part the Pentagon has confirmed, albeit in the most muted tones possible. What we are seeing is not just a military stalemate, it is a diplomatic rupture. Several European nations, who previously provided the backbone for the coalition's legitimacy, are now quietly negotiating separate deconfliction arrangements. They recognize that the United States is pursuing a policy of escalation that does not align with their own national economic interests. This is not a disagreement over tactics. It is a fundamental split in strategic vision. It is not just a minor issue. It is a significant issue. And when you understand the connection between these naval failures and the internal political pressure in Europe, it becomes a critical issue for the future of the alliance. Stay with me because this is where the narrative completely changes and where the implication of a failed containment strategy becomes impossible to ignore. Announcement number 3, and this is the part that almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly, the shift of global energy logistics. Because the Red Sea has become untenable, we are witnessing the permanent rerouting of energy supplies around the Cape of Good Hope. This adds weeks to transit times and costs billions in extra fuel. The reason this is the definitive outcome of this conflict is that it forces the global economy to bypass Western-controlled maritime choke points entirely. By failing to secure the Red Sea, The current strategy has inadvertently accelerated the development of a multipolar trade system that the United States can no longer dominate. Received? That is announcement number 3. Now, let us talk about what is really happening behind the headlines because there are two stories playing out simultaneously, and the mainstream media is only covering the one that supports their desired outcome. Officials have responded by calling for increased pressure and greater coalition unity. This has not notably changed the behavior of the regional actors on the ground. Think carefully about what this represents. When the United States directs its allies to participate in a high-risk blockade, and those allies not only refuse but begin to criticize the operation in public forums, that is not a misunderstanding. That is not diplomatic nuance. That is a verdict on the current U.S. global position. If you rely on global logistics for your business, or if you simply pay for fuel at the pump, what is happening in the Red Sea is not a distant foreign policy story. It is a direct impact story on your cost of living and the stability of the global economy. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. Look at the Peloponnesian War. Two great powers exhausted their resources and destroyed their own economic foundations fighting over minor regional footholds, only to find that while they were blinded by their own pride, a third party, the rising powers of the periphery, had already captured the long-term strategic advantage. The parallel here is exact. The current actors are exhausted, the maritime choke points are being bypassed, and the global order is shifting regardless of what happens on the surface of the Red Sea. So where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 clear paths, because there is no honest middle ground here. Path 1. A negotiated de-escalation where Western forces withdraw to a defensive posture, allowing limited transit to resume. This would require a level of diplomatic humility that we have not seen from this administration. The likelihood of this is low. Path 2. A continued futile attempt at suppression. This leads to the inevitable loss of a major vessel, a carrier or a destroyer, to these autonomous systems. This would be a catastrophic humiliation that would end the current naval strategy overnight. The consequences of this would be global market volatility on a scale we haven't seen in decades. Path 3. The emergence of a regional security architecture that excludes Western participation. I think we are closer to this path than the headlines suggest. The other nations in the region see that the U.S. cannot guarantee their security, and they are already looking for alternatives. That is the trajectory. Here are the questions I want you to take away. Is the era of unchallenged Western maritime dominance effectively over? Are we prepared for the reality of an energy market that is no longer controlled by Western naval presence? And finally, why is the mainstream media so terrified to discuss the failure of these naval tactics? Tell me in the comments what you think the administration does next. Tell me if you think we have already reached the point of no return in these waters. We will keep tracking every development in the Red Sea. That is what this channel does every single day. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand the actual reality behind the propaganda. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update, and we will see you in the next analysis. As a reminder, you can find the latest updates and source verifications pinned in the comments below. What do you think is the most underreported angle in this conflict?